Okay, the sutta tonight is sutta number 44. In the middle length sayings, the shorter series of questions and answers. Thus have I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel's sanctuary. Then the lay follower Visākha went to the bhikkhuni Dhammadinnā, and after paying homage to her, he sat down at one side and asked her, "Lady, identity is said. What is called identity by the Blessed One?" Friend Visākha, these 5 aggregates that are affected by craving and clinging are called identity by the Blessed One. That is material form affected by craving and clinging, the feeling aggregate affected by craving and clinging, the perception aggregate affected by craving and clinging, the formation aggregate affected by craving and clinging, and the consciousness aggregate affected by craving and clinging. These 5 aggregates affected by craving and clinging are called identity by the Blessed One. Saying, "Good lady," the lay follower Visākha delighted and rejoiced in the bhikkhuni Dhammadinnā's words. Then he asked her a further question. "Lady, origin of identity is said. What is called the origin of identity by the Blessed One?" What is the origin of identity? You're right. Friend Visākha, it is craving, which brings renewal of being, is accompanied by delight and lust, and delights in this and that. That is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for being, craving for non-being. This is called the origin of identity by the Blessed One. Lady, cessation of identity is said. What is called the cessation of identity? Friend Visākha, it is the remainderless fading away and ceasing, the giving up, relinquishing, letting go, and rejecting of that same craving. How do you do that? This is called the cessation of identity by the Blessed One. Lady, the way leading to the cessation of identity, is said. What is called the way leading to the cessation of identity by the Blessed One? Friend Visākha, it is just this noble eightfold path. Now, this is all of the right view and all of these kind of things, but I change it to harmonious perspective. What does harmonious perspective mean? It means seeing everything as an impersonal process. Okay? Now here it says right intention. This is really not correct. It's supposed they generally say right thought. I say harmonious imaging. Whatever image you hold in your mind, that's what your belief system is. Your harmonious imaging is imaging having an uplifted mind, being happy, things like that. Next one is right speech. I call it harmonious communication. who do you talk with most?
Myself.
So, what are we talking about here? It's not only with a speech with other people, but it's speech with yourself. Any critical thoughts, any condemning thoughts, any hard thoughts that you have towards yourself is not being in harmony with your communication. You can do 10 things that are great in a day, and you do one thing that your mind says you shouldn't have done that. What do you think about?
Guilt.
Right. So being in harmony with your communication is not focusing on the wrong that your mind thinks is wrong, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. But what it does is it starts focusing on all of the good things you did, on being happy, on having an uplifted mind. The next one they call right action. I call it harmonious movement. You don't jerk your mind around. Because who doesn't like, who tries to suppress, who tries to push things away? Being harmony with the movement means gently 6Ring and letting it go, not trying to force things to stop from happening. Now, the next one is called right livelihood, and this is always comical because in the text they say right livelihood is not selling weapons, not selling poisons, not having slaves, these kind of things. That doesn't have anything to do with the actual practice. So I call it harmonious lifestyle. How do you live? What do you put in front of your mind? A lady or girl that was practicing meditation with me came and started talking about having bad dreams. So I asked her why she had bad dreams. She said, I don't know. But it always seems to happen after I go to the movie and see these scary movies. So I told her, don't do that anymore. And she said, but I like the scary movies. And I said, don't complain to me about bad dreams. Now the next one is right effort. That's the 6Rs. Harmonious practice. The next one is called right mindfulness. I call it harmonious observation. Now, a lot of people have the idea that mindfulness is some kind of club to stop things from happening. And that's not it. It's just observing how mind's attention moves from one thing to another. As you go deeper in your practice, you start seeing how these things occur. And the more you're able to recognize how it occurs, the easier it is to use the 6Rs, not stopping or pushing things away, but allowing them to be without keeping your attention on them. And the last, I got the hiccups. The last one, they call it right concentration, and concentration is not a word that I will use because it's too misunderstood. Concentration, anytime you talk about concentration, you talk about extreme focus. And I use the word harmonious collectedness. Having a mind that's collected means you have a mind that's still. You have a mind that's very observant. You have a mind that's composed. So that gives you more of the idea of what the kind of concentration the Buddha was talking about. It's still a form of concentration, but it's not extreme concentration. Lady, is that clinging the same as these 5 aggregates affected by clinging, or is clinging something apart from the 5 aggregates affected by clinging? Friend Visākha, that craving and clinging is neither the same as these 5 aggregates affected by craving and clinging, nor is the craving and clinging something apart from the 5 aggregates affected by craving and clinging. It is the desire, the lust in regard to the 5 aggregates affected by craving and clinging that is the craving and clinging here. Lady, how does identity view come to be? Identity view means taking things personally. Here, friend Visākha, an untaught, ordinary person who has no regard for the noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, who has no regard for true men and is skilled and unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, regards material form as self, or self as possessed of material form, or material form as in self, or self as in material form. So this is somebody that's not educated. And they always are identifying this is me, this is mine. This is one of the keys of the 6 R's, is that relaxed step. Right after you use that relaxed step, you notice your mind is clear, your mind is bright, your mind is pure. There's no thoughts in it. So you bring that pure mind back to your object of meditation. He regards feeling as self, or self as possessed of feeling, or feeling as in self, or self as in feeling. He regards perception as self, or self as possessed of perception, or perception as in self, or self as in perception. He regards formations as self, or self as possessed of formations, or formations as in self, or self as in formations. He regards consciousness as self, or self as possessed of consciousness. This is the biggie. And this is where an awful lot of people get very confused about no self. I don't like to use the word self because it's like using the word God. Everybody knows what it is, but nobody knows exactly what it is. And there's all these different kinds of definitions. So when you take that and you say personal
Yeah, that's a big difference.
and impersonal, then that makes everything clear. That is how identity view comes to be. Lady, how does identity view not come to be? How does it not come to be?
Using the 6 R's.
That's right. Here, friend Visākha, a well-taught, noble disciple who has regard for the noble ones and is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma, who has regard for true men, who is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma. One page too much. Does not regard material form personally, or personally as possessed of material form, or material form as in it being personal, or personal as in the material form. He does not regard feeling as self, or self as possessed of feeling, or feeling as in self, or self as in feeling. He does not regard perception as self, or self as possessed of perception, or perception as in self, or self as in perception. A lot of people think perception is where the self actually is, because that's the part of the mind that names things, and that's where memory is. And you know that this is a cup because you've been using cups your whole life, and that's what you call it. So that comes from your memory, right? But the actual naming is what the perception is. Perception is where concepts first arise. He does not regard formations as self, or self as possessed of formations, or formations as in self, or self as in formations. He does not regard consciousness as self, or self as possessed of consciousness, or consciousness as in self, or self as in consciousness. This is how identity view does not come to be. Lady, what is the Noble Eightfold Path? Friend Visākha, it is just this Noble Eightfold Path that is harmonious perspective, harmonious imaging, harmonious communication, harmonious movement, harmonious lifestyle, harmonious practice, harmonious observation, harmonious collectedness. And the reason that I change these things instead of just being the standard is when you just say the standard, everybody thinks they know what it is. But when you change it the way I've changed it, it makes it more clear in your own practice. Every time you practice the 6 R's, you are practicing the entire Eightfold Path at that time. Lady, is the Eightfold Path conditioned or unconditioned? What do you think?
Unconditioned.
No. Definitely conditioned. The only thing that's unconditioned is Nibbāna.
Okay.
Friend Visākha, the Noble Eightfold Path is conditioned. Lady, there are the 3 aggregates included by the Noble Eightfold Path, or is a Noble Eightfold Path included by the 3 aggregates? The 3 aggregates are not included by the Eightfold Path friend Visākha, but the Noble Eightfold Path is included in the three aggregates, right? Harmonious communication, harmonious movement, harmonious lifestyle. These states are included in the aggregate of virtue. Harmonious practice, harmonious observation, harmonious collectedness. These states are included in the aggregate of collectedness. Harmonious perspective, harmonious imaging. These states are included in the aggregate of wisdom. Lady, what is collectedness? What is the basis of collectedness? What is the equipment of collectedness? What is the development of collectedness? Unification of mind, friend Visākha, is collectedness. When your mind stays on your object of meditation for a period of time, your mind is very collected, and very alert at the same time. The four foundations of mindfulness are the basis of collectedness. The four right kinds of effort are the equipment of collectedness. Harmonious practice, 6 R's. The repetition, development, and cultivation of these same states is the development of collectedness therein. Lady, how many formations are there? There are these 3 formations. The bodily formation, the verbal formation, and the mental formation. Lady, what is the bodily formation? What is the verbal formation? What is the mental formation? In breathing and out breathing, friend Visākha, are the bodily formation. Thinking and examining thought are the verbal formation. Perception, feeling, and consciousness are the mental formation. Lady, why are the in and out breathing the bodily formation? Why are the thinking and examining thought the verbal formation? Why are perception, feeling, and consciousness the mental formation? Friend Visākha, in and out breathing are bodily. These are states bound up with the body. That is why in breathing and out breathing are the bodily formation. First one thinks and examines thought, and subsequently one breaks out into speech, internal dialogue. That is why thinking and examining thought are verbal formations. Perception, feeling, and consciousness are mental. These are states bound up with mind. That is why perception, feeling, and consciousness are the mental formation. Lady, how does one attain the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness? How does it come to be? Friend Visākha, when a monk is attaining the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, it does not occur to him, I shall attain the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. Or I am attaining the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. Or I have attained the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. But rather his mind has previously been developed in such a way that it leads him to that state. When you get it, when it happens, you don't know that it's happened until you get out. Lady, when a monk is attaining the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, which state ceases first in him? The bodily formation, the verbal formation, or the mental formation? Friend Visākha, when a monk is attaining the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, first the verbal formation ceases, then the bodily formation, then the mental formation. Lady, how does emergence from the attainment of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness come to be? Friend Visākha, when a monk is emerging from the attainment of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, it does not occur to him, I shall emerge from the attainment of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. Or I am emerging from the attainment of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. Or I have emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. But rather his mind has previously been developed in such a way that it leads him to that state. Lady, when a monk is emerging from the attainment of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, which state arise first in him? Bodily formation, verbal formation, or mental formation? Friend Visākha, when a monk is emerging from the attainment of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, first the mental formation arises, then the bodily formation arises, then the verbal formation. Lady, when a monk has emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, how many kinds of contact touch him? Friend Visākha, when a monk has emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, 3 kinds of contact touch him. Voidness contact, signless contact, and desireless contact. Lady, when a monk has emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, to what does his mind incline? To what does it lean? To what does it tend? Friend Visākha, when a monk has emerged from this attainment of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, his mind inclines to seclusion, leans to seclusion, tends to seclusion. Okay, let's go back here. What is the voidness contact?
I don't know.
The voidness contact is the impersonal nature of everything. The signless contact, there are no signs while you're in that, so there's a signless contact when you're coming out. And the desireless contact, that's pretty self-explanatory. How many kinds of feeling are there? Friend Visākha, there are 3 kinds of feeling, or 2 kinds of feeling, or 5 kinds of feeling, or 6 kinds of feeling, or 18 kinds of feeling, or 36 kinds of feeling, or 108 kinds of feeling.
Sisters in here to do the meeting.
She's read the many kinds of feeling to you, I think.
Yeah. Need to check the footnotes for a few of them.
But for right now, we'll just take 3. Pleasant feeling, painful feeling, and neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Lady, what is pleasant feeling? What is painful feeling? What is neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visākha, whatever is felt bodily or mentally as pleasant. See, you can't take the body and just say that's a pleasant feeling, because it has to be, they come together. Body and mind are always, they're conjoined. Okay, friend Visākha, whatever is felt bodily or mentally as pleasant, soothing, and soothing is a pleasant feeling. Whatever is felt bodily or mentally as painful and hurting is a painful feeling. Doesn't matter whether it's mental or physical. Treat them in the same way. Whatever is felt bodily or mentally as neither soothing nor hurting is neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Lady, what is pleasant? What is painful in regard to pleasant feeling? What is painful and what is pleasant in regard to painful feeling? What is pleasant and what is painful in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visākha, pleasant feeling is pleasant when it persists and painful when it changes. Painful feeling is painful when it persists and pleasant when it changes. Neither painful nor pleasant feeling is pleasant when there is knowledge of it, not being indifferent to it. That means having equanimity. And painful when there is no knowledge of it, when you're being indifferent, because there's no mindfulness at that time. Lady, what underlying tendency underlies pleasant feeling? What underlying tendency underlies painful feeling? What underlying tendency underlies neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visākha, the underlying tendency to lust underlies pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion underlies painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance underlies neither painful nor pleasant feeling. What's ignorance?
Not being aware of impersonal.
Not seeing the Four Noble Truths. Ignorance is always Four Noble Truths. Lady, does the underlying tendency to lust underlie all pleasant feeling? Does the underlying tendency to aversion underlie all painful feeling? Does the underlying tendency to ignorance underlie all neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Good question. Friend Visākha, the underlying tendency to lust does not underlie all painful feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion does not underlie all painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance does not underlie all neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Lady, what should be abandoned in regard to pleasant feeling? What should be abandoned in regard to painful feeling? What should be abandoned in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visākha, the underlying tendency should be abandoned in regard to pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion should be abandoned in regard to painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance should be abandoned in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Makes sense. Lady, does the underlying tendency to lust have to be abandoned in regard to all pleasant feeling? What do you think?
Well, if it doesn't underlie all pleasant feelings, then yes.
No. See, you have pleasant feeling when you're in the jhana, then it doesn't have the underlying tendency to lust.
Yeah, I was going to think that.
Does the underlying tendency to aversion have to be abandoned in regard to all painful feeling? Does the underlying tendency to ignorance have to be abandoned in regard to all neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visākha, the underlying tendency to lust does not have to be abandoned in regard to all pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion does not have to be abandoned in regard to all painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance does not have to be abandoned in regard to all neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Here, friend Visākha, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a monk enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thinking and examining thought with joy and happiness born of seclusion. With that, he abandons lust, and the underlying tendency to lust does not underlie that. Here a monk considers thus: when shall I enter upon and abide in that base that the noble ones now enter and abide in? In one who thus generates a longing for the supreme liberation, grief arises with that longing as condition. With that he abandons aversion and the underlying tendency to aversion. And the underlying tendency to aversion does not underlie that. So pointing your mind in the direction of attaining Nibbāna doesn't have, it's painful because you have the longing, you want it to happen. So there's a little bit of grief when it doesn't happen. But there isn't the underlying tendency to aversion because you're pointing your mind that way, right? Here, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, a monk enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. With that, he abandons ignorance. Why? Because your mindfulness is very sharp. And you see everything with a balanced mind. The underlying tendency to ignorance does not underlie that. Lady, what is a counterpart of pleasant feeling? Friend Visākha, painful feeling is a counterpart of pleasant feeling. What is the counterpart of painful feeling? Pleasant feeling is a counterpart of painful feeling. What is the counterpart of neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Ignorance is the counterpart of neither painful nor pleasant feeling. What is the counterpart of ignorance? True knowledge is the counterpart of ignorance. What is the counterpart of true knowledge? Deliverance is the counterpart of true knowledge. What is the counterpart of deliverance? Nibbāna is the counterpart of deliverance. Lady, what is the counterpart of Nibbāna? Friend Visākha, you have pushed this line of questioning too far, for you are not able to grasp the limit to the questions. For the holy life, friend Visākha, is grounded upon Nibbāna, culminates in Nibbāna, and ends in Nibbāna. If you wish, friend Visākha, to go to the Blessed One and ask him about the meaning of this, as the Blessed One explains it to you, you should remember it. Then a lay follower, Visākha, having delighted and rejoiced in the bhikkhuni Dhammadinnā's words, rose from his seat, and after paying homage to him, keeping him on his right, he went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to him, he sat down at one side and told the Blessed One his entire conversation with the bhikkhuni Dhammadinnā. When he finished speaking, the Blessed One told him, "The bhikkhuni Dhammadinnā is wise, Visākha. The bhikkhuni Dhammadinnā has great wisdom. If you had asked me the meaning of this, I would have explained it to you in the same way that the bhikkhuni Dhammadinnā has explained it. Such is its meaning, and you should remember it." She was like the first disciple. She was foremost in wisdom to the Buddha of the female order. Sariputta was foremost in wisdom of the male order. That is what the Blessed One said. The lay follower Visākha was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. Now, the thing that's real interesting about this is Visākha and Dhammadinnā were husband and wife. He was a merchant. He was very successful. He started going and visiting the Buddha. And after hanging out all day with the Buddha, one day he became an anagami, which means that he didn't have any more lust or hatred arise in his mind ever again. So he went home, and Visākha saw him coming and went to greet him like he always did. And she tried to give him a hug, and he stopped her. And then they had their meal and got time to go to bed. And Visākha laid down on the bed, and Dhammadinnā laid down beside him, and Visākha got up off the bed, laid down on the floor. She got off the bed, laid down on the floor beside him. He got up, went on the bed. And she started thinking, he must be really mad at me for some reason. So she asked him what was the reason, and he reluctantly told her that he had become an anagami, and they couldn't live like husband and wife anymore. They could live like brother and sister. And when she heard that, she asked him permission to become a bhikkhuni. And in a fairly short period of time after her becoming a bhikkhuni, she became an arhat. And that's why I went and started asking questions of her, because she was an arhat. She was second to the Buddha in wisdom. So that gives you a little bit of the story. So, any questions?
Yeah, if I could talk a little bit about kind of what's been going on with me. I guess I feel like I was missing something the past couple of weeks that you kept telling me that I should have, and now I kind of realize that if I'm not happy meditating, how is any joy or happiness ever going to arise? I mean, I was really unhappy. I realized a lot of the time while I was meditating, and that was, I don't know why I didn't kind of realize that. You know, it seemed like such a big thing to miss, and now that, you know, my question is it something that now I understand because I've been doing it for a while, or is it something I could have been happy from the beginning, you know, put more emphasis on that?
You had things blocking you.
Yeah.
And you've been letting them go. And now you're finally starting to hear what I say. I mean, I only say it a few times every day.
Yeah.
But everybody that goes through something like this. Everybody comes with their own baggage, and they have to be able to see through that and let go of the old attachments and old ways of acting and being. And you do it at your own pace. Sometimes I'll push it a little bit, not much.
The joy that arises, it feels pretty impersonal.
It is.
Yeah. I mean,
Joy arises when conditions are right for it to arise.
I don't know, that just is really interesting to me how impersonal it is. And then it's also a bit much. It's a bit, I don't know, I guess mainly yesterday it was just kind of coming out all the time, you know?
Overpowering.
Yeah, a little bit, so.
So just let it be there. Keep your attention on your object of meditation. It doesn't matter whether it's pain or joy.
Yeah.
You treat it in the same way. It's just a feeling, right? So you'll allow the feeling to be there. Relax.
Sorry, I laugh a lot though when it happens.
I had one student when I first started teaching in Florida. He would sit and he would kind of giggle to himself the whole time. And he was feeling very self-conscious because everybody else was sitting and they were all around him. And he came and he said, you know, I'm laughing all the time. Should I stop? And everybody else that had come to that retreat told me they really liked it when he was because he was reminding them to keep their mind up. It's not a problem. You should hear Irwin.
Yeah. Mr. Gigglebox. Yep.
he really gets caught up in his hindrances. And every now and then he writes to me and tells me that he's really caught up in his hindrance, and I don't like this and I don't like that. So I tell him what to do, and he doesn't. So I said, well, I think you really ought to make yourself really, really suffer. So here's what you got to do. I want you to go outside, take your shoes off, go up to the nearest tree, and kick it with your toes as hard as you can. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
And as soon as he started laughing, then he saw that it wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah.
But I had to come up with all kinds of different ways to get him to laugh. And as soon as he laughed, he wasn't caught by the hindrance anymore.
Yeah, that's a talent.
Well, so now he's got it. He really does understand it. So when he's really hurting, he'll go out for a walk and have nothing but belly laughs. It's really amazing.
In Joshua Tree, he was always laughing. It was great. He's not doing that, he's crying.
Oh, he came to me one retreat, and he had these tears coming down his face, and he said, I feel so happy, I can't believe it. And he said, I got all these tears. And I said, well, it's just a release, it's no big deal. I had one man that, he was a monk actually, that tears started coming, and they lasted 3 days. And he started complaining to me about his robe getting wet. What am I supposed to do with that? I said, take a towel and hold it under. It's not a big deal. He had great big red lines down his face from the tears. It was such an amazing release. What had happened to him was he was in his early 20s, and he went to seminary, and he got into wrong concentration and went crazy. So now he's in his 50s or getting close to 60, and I come along and I tell him he doesn't have to try so hard, and all he needs to do is just kind of laugh with things and be light. And it was such relief to him to find out that he didn't have to put that kind of energy into trying to suppress feelings. That,
It's a revelation.
yeah,
For some of us,
yeah, it really was. So it was such a relief that he was, tears of joy were coming out all over the place. And everybody at that retreat, they came and told me how bad they felt for Erwin because he was crying, and I'm going, no, you don't feel sorry about that. He has so much joy, it's just causing tears to come. He's not sad. So these are some of the things that can happen. It's not anything to be overly concerned with. Just smile and relax into it. Allow it to be there. You're not there to change anything. Change comes from your not keeping your attention on it and coming back to your object of meditation.
I'm still working on energy.
Well,
Still
yeah,
figuring
of course. You're still figuring it out. And that's fine. There's no problem with that.
Yeah.
That's how you learn.
Yeah.
Because you have to learn at your own pace. I had one woman that came and she did 2 or 3 retreats with me, and she had almost no progress at all. She'd been meditating with a lot of other people, and she kept on hearing me say, relax, relax, smile, smile, relax, smile, relax, smile. And she came to me one day and she was like radiant. And she said, you know, you've been telling me this I don't know how long, and now I know what you mean. And a couple of days later she went deeper, and now she came back and she said, now I really know what you mean.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it is good stuff. Keeping your mind happy and uplifted, that's the job. That's the job of everybody that really wants to let go of their suffering. It works.
That's the signal yet.
No.
May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-strapped fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. Space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.